Welcome to another episode of Heart of the Matter Radio podcast. We're doing a special promotion this week, and we're calling it Balloon Week because October the 1st is Balloon Day around the world, and it's also Ancestor Day. So, remembering ancestors who influenced us and impacted us, particularly the ones that inspired us for this next week. And if you want to take part in remembering an ancestor, you can send me a message at cynthia@clsimmons.com, and I will put you in a drawing for a book. I'm giving away a book by Cynthia Ruchti and a book by Karen Whiting, and I'll be giving one after a drawing to two people who message me. So you can be a part of that, or if you want to celebrate with me and take part in my gifts, I'm going to put a link at the end that you can scan, and I'll be sending you a series of gifts to help to get to know your family better. All that to say, it's time to celebrate. And we're going to start with Rebecca Price Janney, and she's going to talk about her relative and how her relative inspired her.
My grandmother on my mom's side was Pennsylvania Dutch. And I used to like to ask her where her family came from. And she would always say to me, we were from Easton, Pennsylvania. And that's all that I could ever get out of her, that we were from Easton. And I tried to make her understand that I wanted to go further back. And now that I realize years later, what I was asking her was something that in a way she did understand, and I didn't get it at the time. She was right that we were from Easton, but I wanted to know where we were from before that. And for whatever reason, she knew very little about her family background. She knew that they were Pennsylvania German, which confused me a little bit because I associated it with the Amish. And Easton is about an hour and a half's drive from the Pennsylvania Dutch Amish country and out in Lancaster County. So I knew we weren't that, but I didn't realize at the time that Pennsylvania Dutch actually meant Pennsylvania German. And there were any number of varieties of Pennsylvania Germans, from the Amish to the Mennonites to the Quakers to the Reformed and the Lutheran Germans. And so she was right. We were Pennsylvania Dutch, but she didn't even know her own grandmother's name. So that tells you how little that we knew about our family. And on my mother's father's side, they knew that they were Welsh and probably German, but again, they really didn't know. I'm not sure how true this is for most of your families out there, but my family wasn't really all that involved in genealogy. I think that they were so busy living through things like world wars and the Depression that there wasn't a lot of extra time to go digging around in libraries before the internet to try to figure out who their ancestors were. But I'd say it was about a dozen years or so ago that I decided to give my mom the gift of her ancestry. And I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do it, but I am a historian. Research is my middle name. And at that time, Ancestry.com was just coming on this scene. And I thought, I'm going to sign up, and for my mom's birthday, I'm going to solve this mystery, where we were from. So I did that, and I was amazed at how the years just started rolling past. And I had suspected that my family had come here sometime around the Civil War. I wasn't really sure if it was before the 1860s or after the 1860s, but there was a large German immigration around that time. And I thought maybe that was it. But then I kept rolling back the decades, and I soon found myself, to my delight, in the 18th century. And that's where I discovered Colonel Peter Kishline. And at first, I thought that he was maybe an uncle. And then I realized that he was actually my 6 times great grandfather. And it changed my life. It totally made me look at my own love of history, my passion for the American Revolution. It just made those things make so much sense to me. I used to go to Williamsburg, Virginia a lot with my husband, and I always felt so at home there. I felt like I could have fit right back in those days and been very comfortable. And I didn't know why. I didn't know why when I was writing one of my first books and I came upon the story of George Washington's flying camp at the Battle of Brooklyn in 1776. I didn't know why I felt so connected to that event. When I discovered Colonel Kishline and his life, it all began to make sense. So Peter, I like to call him Grandfather Peter, came from Germany with his family, his other 2 brothers, his mother and his stepfather in 1742. Let me think, he was just about 20 years old at the time. They settled in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and he set out on his own shortly afterwards. And a few years later, ended up in what is now Northampton County, Pennsylvania, and the county seat is Easton. So records show that he was in the area even before it was established officially by the William Penn family in 1752. So Peter was an early inhabitant of the Easton area, and he became very involved in civic affairs right off the bat. His name is on one of the earliest documents as one of the school trustees. So the Germans who settled in that area wanted to have a school, and he was one of the trustees. So I traced his life with such interest and felt such a connection to him. And I'd never really felt that way before about somebody who lived that long ago, but he was like my kindred, a kindred spirit. And of course, he's my ancestor. He became Northampton County's sheriff in 1766, and he served for 2 terms. And if you name a public office from those days, he probably filled it. He was also a very active church member. He was an elder. He helped build the church that is still standing in Easton and that I'm a member of, and was very enthusiastic about his faith and very close to other great men of the era who were also men of faith. So he became truly a hero to me and showed me what courage looks like under fire. As sheriff of Northampton County, he was under fire frequently. He actually did serve at the Battle of Brooklyn that I just spoke about a few minutes ago. He commanded the Northampton County Flying Camp, which was a unit of rapid responders. And most of his men were either killed or imprisoned in that battle. But they helped hold off the British long enough to allow George Washington and his remaining army to escape. And if they hadn't done that, the war might have been over almost as soon as it started. So after the battle, he was wounded in the battle and imprisoned and endured horrific conditions along with his remaining men until he was paroled 6 months later, sent back to Easton, and made to promise that he wouldn't pick up arms again against the king. And while he didn't pick up arms again, he did pick up his pen, and he continued to serve in various non-combatant roles during the Revolution. in the Declaration of Independence, where it talks about pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, that's what he did. And that's the example that he has set for me, for my husband, for our son. And I'm so honored that someone like him was in my family and there to help point the way. I think of the times that we're living in now and what Thomas Paine wrote in December 1776 applies to us still today. These are the times that try men's souls. And I don't know a person alive right now who doesn't feel the stress of the times that we're living in. And I feel that what he set before me, what Peter Kishline set before me, is an example to follow. I really do want to follow in his footsteps, even though I'm not going to be picking up a rifle and going to battle somewhere. I have a different kind of weapon to yield in our fight, in our present fight. And so one of the things that I've done is run for public office, which I never did before, but I thought, hey, he did it and he served very capably. Let me give it a try. And so I am on my second term now in a very small but official role in my community. As you can imagine, I'm very busy right now with election season. And I often think of him. I often think of the example that he set and lived before me. And not only him, but many of my other ancestors. I've counted since then at least a dozen who served in the American Revolution. And then in most of America's wars since then. And most recently, World War II, where my father served in Europe. How can I do any less than those great patriots?
What a beautiful story from Rebecca Price Janney. Thank you, Rebecca. And don't forget to send me a message, Cynthia@clsimmons.com, with your relative or with maybe even a picture of someone who inspired you. And then also, you can scan the picture at the end, the little QR code, and I have special gifts for you to help you get to know your family better. Thank you so much.